Hey folks, welcome. This is an unboxing of the latest Advanced Squad Leader product from Multi-Man Publishing. This is the new 4th edition of Doomed Battalions. Now, I bought this because my version of Doomed Battalions was actually the old Avalon Hill one, and if that's the one that you have, and if in fact you have some of the earlier editions that Multi-Man did, you're probably going to find that this is a substantial upgrade. Whether you need it or not is another question. So we're going to have a look at the new Doom Battalions today. I've been waiting for this for years. This is kind of the last of the core ASL modules from Multi-Man that I didn't have the updated edition of, so I'm excited to take a look at this. Unexpectedly, however, it's in a 2-inch Multi-Man box, unlike the usual 3-inch box that we would expect a ASL core module to be in. It's fine. The box is not going to store the game anyway. So this is the Allied Minor. So if you got like Dutch or Poles or whatever, this is the module that will give you the material to play those nationalities. So without further ado, let's get her open here. Now, of course, my ASL material is in hideous disarray, but you know, eventually we'll figure that out. But eventually we'll actually play ASL again too. So the first thing we get on top, as usual, is the product components list that MMP always throws in the top. So this should contain a box and a lid, 5 8x22-inch ASL maps, 3 sheets of overlays, 4 counter sheets, 32 scenarios, Allied Minor Chapter H, replacement rulebook pages, and an updated national capabilities and terrain chart, actually. That's cool. I haven't gotten an updated terrain chart in a while. We do get updated national capabilities charts periodically, and I'm probably just putting all this back in the box for now because I'm not really sure what to do with it. So on top are the Chapter H notes. Chapter H, if you don't know, is basically all the different vehicles for ASL. A lot of them have special rules that apply to those particular vehicles, at least in certain scenarios. Chapter H gives you all of that material. This material is already, as is the ASL rulebook, available in digital form, and to be frank, rather than dealing with the loose leaf pages, my personal recommendation is to either buy the pocket rulebook if you want a physical copy, or the digital rulebook, and you can get those through Wargame Vault. I think that's a separate purchase from the Chapter H material. So next in the box is the typical ASL/Multi-Man page of blankness. I think that's just some kind of collation thing that happens. Here we have, this is going to be the terrain chart, the updated terrain chart. I'm not sure what the stuff in red is off the top of my head. It is concealment terrain. Okay, cool. Somebody in the comments would have noticed that anyway and corrected me. So this will replace your Chapter B divider. And then we have a big stack of scenarios, and another blank piece of paper here for no obvious reason. We're also going to have some maps. So let's look at the scenarios last, because we'll actually take at least a peek at each one of them. So boards, we've got 5 boards in here. This is board number 9, or replacement board number 9, the old legendary hill board. We've got some overlays and another blank piece of paper. This particular product might be setting a record for blank pieces of paper. Looks like we got a rail yards here, and some railroads, and some miscellaneous overlays. So we'll set that aside. There's an overlay pack that you can get. I didn't buy the pack because I pretty much have all the overlays. I should correct myself. I actually don't have Twilight of the Reich, which is basically the Berlin 45 module that does contain a bunch of special rules. That is considered a core module. Next map up is map number 11 with another couple of slightly smaller hills and a little bit of a hamlet in the middle there. We also have map 33, which is a big wheat field. And we're just leaving the counters out for now. This is going to be the updated national capabilities chart. So kind of a lot of the basic data for the different types of troops that you have in ASL is found on this chart. And it needs to be updated from time to time. There's a lot of different German squad types. There's a lot of Finnish squad types. But if you think about it, in most ASL scenarios, and basically all ASL scenarios in the European theater, the Germans are one side of the affair, aside from the occasional Axis minors as well. So this will replace your Chapter A national capabilities chart, I believe. And here is board number 44, which is pretty flat with a couple of crop fields in here and a few buildings. Nothing amazingly remarkable or distinct about these in particular. Here's board 45, which is a city board, and you can see there's some pretty big buildings on here. This would be pretty interesting. And then at the bottom of the box, we've got the replacement rulebook pages. Very quickly leafing through that. These are basically all chapters A and B. So we will put those with the printed matter while we take a quick look at the scenarios, and we'll put the... I think I want to store my boards flat, but in order to store my boards flat, I've got to actually organize my ASL stuff. So that will not be occurring today. So always happy to have more boards. I thought I had board 9 already. I could be wrong. I might also have it in the original hard-mounted version from Avalon Hill, and I actually prefer these cardstock maps, what some people call the starter kit style maps. They're a lot easier to transport, they're a lot lighter, they're a lot easier to store, and I'd rather deal with them. So here we have some Soviet vehicles and Allied minor ordnance, and a few vehicles. More Allied minor vehicles. We've got some replacement for Axis minor vehicle, note number 30. So these are the Axis minors. Then we get some miscellaneous markers here, and then we've got the general 2 sheets that we typically get with each nationality in ASL, which is a big sheet of multi-man and multi-man counters and leaders. In addition, over here we get a few Germans, because I guess we needed more, and a variety of markers, especially new human wave markers. These look new as opposed to the old ones. And a new turn marker too, so that's pretty cool. And replacement Russian assault engineers for Trial of the Reich. So they're starting to put errata counter for the previous product in the ASL stuff too. That's kind of a long-standing multi-man thing. Just I'm not sure I've noticed it for ASL before, but they've done that with the rule books, right? So might as well include everything. All right, so scenario 43, Into the Fray. This is Poland 1939, Poles versus Germans. On the back of that, we have 44, The Gauntlet. This is in Norway 1940, Norwegians versus Germans. Revenge at Castelli. This is in Crete, and we've got some Greeks versus some Germans. Birds of Prey, Belgium 1940. Once again, Belgians versus Germans. Rude Awakening is 1941 in Yugoslavia, and we've got the Yugoslav army here, a big force from the Yugoslav army, actually, some of which will be mounted. We've got a cavalry regiment here versus some Germans with a couple of tanks. On the back of that, we've got Toujours l'Audace in Belgium 1940, once again, Belgians versus Germans. Piercing the Peel in the Netherlands 1940, Dutch versus Germans. Age-old foes. This scenario has been updated from its original version. I would expect that to be the case with a lot of these, if not all of them. And this is Russians versus Poles. So this is 1939 as well. Very interesting scenario there. There was some fighting in the eastern half of Poland in 1939. An uncommon occurrence, ASL scenario 83. This is in Poland 1939. Simultaneous setup, Poles versus Germans. You notice scenario designed by Kurt Schilling. Now, what I don't know and can't tell you is where these scenarios originally occurred. Some of them would have been in earlier versions of Doom Battalions, but a lot of them would have occurred either in Special Ops Magazine or one of the ASL journals, or there's a huge number of sources for ASL scenarios at this point. And I would guess that I, not having anything remotely resembling everything, although I do have all the core modules, have north of 1,000 scenarios. So I am doing great scenario-wise for ASL, but you can't have too many, right? So here's another Poles versus Germans, 1939 for round 1. No Way Out, Polish versus German in 39. Fighting Back, Poles versus Germans. So a lot of 1939 in Poland stuff, which is not a surprise. That campaign was a little less of a cakewalk than a lot of folks think. It was still a decisive German victory, don't get me wrong, but they didn't walk over the Poles in absolutely every tactical situation by any means. Here's Danes versus Germans. That's very interesting. This is probably the biggest battle of that entire campaign. I'm joking. Art Nouveau, Belgium 1940. Rescue Attempt, Belgium 1940. Pride and Joy, Greeks versus Italians. So this would be 1940 as well. Italian Brothers, near Brihuega, Spain, 1937. This is a Spanish Civil War scenario. What pieces do you use for this? Allied versus and Axis miners? I actually don't know. I'd have to figure that out. But it's Spanish Civil War. Back of that, we've got the Rattle of Sabres, Poland again, 1939. The Weigh-In, 1939 Poland, and another Kurt Schilling design. I'm not really checking that for every single one. Round 2, Germans versus Poles. We've got some cats interfering with the production today, pardon me. Action at Balberkamp, Norway, 1940. Allies versus, interesting. We've got some British infantry here along with Norwegian defenders. That's very intriguing. On the road to Andelsnes. I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly. Dear Donbass, Norway, 1940. Norwegians and Germans. Greba End, the Netherlands, 1940. And we got, once again, Dutch versus Germans here. The Professionals, Yugoslavs. There's a lot of room for scenarios. Remember that ASL is a tactical level game, right? So even a campaign in which the Germans walked all over their opponents, you could still get a lot of interesting tactical situations out of that, and that's ample fodder for ASL material. Meszek Fire Brigade, Poland, 1939. Riding the coattails. Poles versus Slovakians, who were Axis allies. So this will be Allied versus Axis miners. Will to Fight eradicated. Poland, 1939. Sequential setup. Interesting. You've got a Polish part of the Polish setup, then the German setup, then some more Poles setup. Very interesting. That is intriguing. That's presumably in the scenario special rules. On the back, we have a Polish Requiem for mid-September 1949. Poles versus Germans. Votes Ritterkreuz. This is the Netherlands in 1940. Dutch versus Germans. Stingham at Zingham. Zingham, Belgium, 1940. Belgium versus Germans. Airborne Samurai. Oh, very interesting. Airborne Samurai. The Dutch versus the Japanese on Celebes. Celebes? I don't know how that's pronounced. 1942. Super interesting scenario. We've got an airdrop scenario. I have never played with the airdrop rules at all, but I'd be super intrigued to do so. Defeat in Java. Once again, we have Japanese versus, looks like a little bit of a scratch force of Dutch and British, including some kind of small vehicle. So a lot of content in here with 40 plus scenarios. You will get a lot of play value out of that, and there are some scenarios in here that I would call pretty unusual scenarios in terms of situations, like the Dutch versus the Japanese in the East Indies, that you probably don't have that many scenarios on, although in general there's a lot of ASL scenarios. So this has been a look at the new 4th edition of Doom Battalions from Multiman Publishing.
Massive thanks to the patrons of Ardwulf's Lair, whose support and encouragement make what we do at Ardwulf's Lair possible. Thank you, patrons. Links to help support the channel are in the video description, so check out the Patreon, the Ko-Fi, and the merch store, where you can get snazzy Ardwulf's Lair t-shirts, drinking vessels, and other cool swag. There is also an affiliate link for Noble Knight Games in the video description. If you buy stuff through that affiliate link, it helps to support the channel with Noble Knight store credit. Thank you, Noble Knight. Until next time, thanks for watching, and happy gaming.